So there's no denying it. It really seems like Alberta is going full-fledged towards separation. So much so that the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, is actually changing the rules on the voting process to separate. So I think before they needed about 600,000 or 700,000 signatures to then trigger the referendum. She brought it down to like 160,000. So if that's not a clear sign that this is a huge deal and this is direction that Alberta is really going towards, then I don't know what else is. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, I hope you stick around the full video because you're gonna want to see every little bit of this. Let's get into this video. Starting off with complete lies by Rosemary Barton post-election. Here we go.
I think it's very clear, regardless, we'll see what happens inside his own riding, and we're being very careful because advance votes and all those kinds of things. But he was definitely laying the groundwork that he has no intention of leaving, and he was pointing to the proof points as to why he deserves to stay and continue this fight. And I know you think that he will. I do know people who are already gearing up to try and push him out. We'll see what happens.
Well, I know a lot of Conservatives in Canada, and I haven't heard that from anybody. Not to say they don't exist.
Well, they exist. I don't know if they tell you, but they told me.
He certainly has. He certainly has earned, in my view, the right to stay on as leader, for the reasons I've already articulated, and that he did tonight. Look. He's got to show some humility for sure. Any leader who loses in any circumstance has to do that.
I can't stand her. She is full of lies, and that was part of the reason why Pierre was suggesting we pretty much defund the CBC, because immediately after the election, Pierre Polyv took to the stage and said that he is sticking around for the long run to fight the good fight in Canada. Here we go.
I'm standing in the Ottawa area riding of Carleton. Pierre Polyv has held this seat since 2004, and in the most surprising upset of all last night, voters have now flipped it Liberal red.
It's a bittersweet moment.
Taking down lawn signs this morning, Jeff Turner has worked on every Pierre Polyv campaign since the first in 2004.
It's a shock, really. You know, there was rumors of a possible change, but it wasn't really something I was ready for, or that any of us that were working for Pierre were really expecting.
While nationally, Conservatives picked up the biggest vote share since 1988, and in Ontario, they won 1 million more votes than Premier Doug Ford did at his re-election.
I'm focusing on unity right across this country. We have to bring this country together like we've never had before.
In his own riding, Liberal Bruce Fanjoy beat Polyv by more than 4,300 votes.
No matter what happens tomorrow, I will be there to fight for you.
From his final campaign rally to his election night speech, the now seatless opposition leader made it clear he's not interested in stepping aside.
It will be an honor to continue to fight for you and to be a champion of your cause as we go forward.
But parliamentary experts say the man known for being a question period pit bull will have to watch from the gallery until he can win a new seat.
Mr. Polyv would basically have to convince one of his Conservative members to give up their seat, which would then trigger a by-election.
Back in Carleton, it's still hard to process. What is Carleton without Pierre Polyv?
I don't know.
Every election, Polyv is known for door knocking at as many houses as possible here in this riding. As one senior Conservative source put it to CTV News, this time he wasn't here, door knocking across the country instead, inadvertently sacrificing his own seat to pick up 24 more.
But the question still remains, where is Pierre going to go? Because he has to have a seat. Is he going to come to Vancouver Island where he kind of flipped a bunch of seats? I don't know. There's reason to believe that maybe he goes to Alberta.
This was a fascinating election, Vashti. Let's start with Pierre Polyev's future. How does he stay on as leader without winning his seat? And does he have the support of his caucus?
Yeah, I don't think we would be as, skeptical about his prospects of staying on as leader if he didn't lose that seat. He's going to have to find a seat in the House of Commons in order to occupy the residence for the opposition leader or even be the opposition leader, the way the rules are written. That might happen in Alberta, I am being told, but no finalized decision on that front. I think caucus support is the big factor. It was with his predecessors in Andrew Scheer and Aaron O'Toole. He has way more of it, but there is some pushback about the level of control that he exerted in the pre-writ period and during the campaign, and that could manifest into something more significant in the coming days and weeks, Emar.
And looking at the final tally, the Liberals were 3 seats shy of a majority, so a strong minority government, but a minority all the same. How confident are they that they will be able to push forward their legislative agenda in a timely way?
Well, I've been talking, Omar, to as many people in and around Mark Carney as I can over the course of the day. They wanted a majority. To be clear, they wanted a majority. They thought it was in their sights, but they're okay today with the idea of 169 seats. Getting their agenda over the finish line with just 3 extra votes needed. They can draw from 3 different parties. They don't feel it will be as big a challenge as perhaps, let's say, other minority governments before them, so they're feeling pretty optimistic right now.
Regardless of where Pierre goes to get that seat, it's still going to be very interesting in the coming years, or I guess in the coming weeks, because the House of Commons does resume May 26th, on about a month from now. So Pierre doesn't have that much time to pick which seat and then to run a quick by-election to secure that spot. And the media is speculating that upon return of Parliament, it seems like there's going to be all of these uniting moments with our parties, or some could, refer to that as coalitions.
Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet says he has mixed feelings about last night's election results. And Matt, he says he's ready to work with the Liberals.
Yeah, that's right. And just on that first point, the mixed feelings, the Bloc Québécois is going to lose about 1/3 of their seats. They started with 33. They're projected to win 22. And while that is a major setback for the Bloc, leader Yves-François Blanchet says that he considers it a modest success. Obviously, the campaign got off to a rocky start. The impact of Donald Trump, it made a big impact. He took up a lot of airtime. And only after the debate, once Trump started to fade a little bit, it wasn't the #1 priority or the only issue taking up all the airspace, did the Bloc start to win back some of its support. At a press conference today, Blanchet said he was proud that the Bloc managed to stop a red wave across Quebec. And on sovereignty, Blanchet says he'll continue to speak about it when the circumstances call for it. But he said for now, the main priority for Quebecers is negotiations with the United States. He says the results from last night's election tell him that Quebecers want him to have a seat at the negotiating table. And he says he's willing to work with the Liberals as long as he gets what he called mutual collaboration. Now, this will be a difficult tightrope for the sovereigntist leader to walk while he tries to balance the interests of his base as well as work with Mark Carney to protect Canada from the United States.
The last thing the Quebec people and Canada people want is instability in the federal parliament. It's not something very easy to say because those who fought for this result want us to go on with independence as soon as possible, but I'm sure that they understand that the population of Quebec said, we might be back, but now fix this thing. And I intend to contribute fixing this thing with no compromise for the interests of Quebec.
Well, already Blanchet's strategy of collaboration with Mark Carney and the Liberals isn't sitting well with PQ leader Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, who accused Blanchet today of putting off independence for a year and also validating Mark Carney. Plamondon has said that Mark Carney's Liberals are a threat to Quebec's interests.
And speaking of coalition, this would not be a possible video without Jagmeet Singh or the NDP, which I can't help but smile about how they have lost their official party status. But what does this mean for the NDP? Well, Let's take a look at that.
Not only did Jagmeet Singh lose his Burnaby riding to a Liberal candidate with little national name recognition, his party is now in tatters. After leading the NDP for nearly 8 years, Jagmeet Singh was unable to win his own riding, coming third behind the Liberal winner and the Conservatives.
Tonight, I've been informed a party leader that I'll be stepping down as party leader as soon as an interim leader can be appointed. Now, I could not have done this incredible job without, here's a point, give me a second to break down a bit. I couldn't have done it without the incredible support of my wife, Gurkiran.
Before the dissolution of Parliament, the New Democrats had 24 seats. It was only able to hold on to 7. The NDP has lost official party status. That means it loses its research budget in Parliament, and its MPs will lose the opportunity to ask scheduled questions in the House of Commons.
I'm hopeful for our party. I know that we will always choose hope over fear and optimism over despair and unity over hate.
This was the NDP's worst showing in its history. Worse than 1993, when it won 9 seats under Audrey McLaughlin.
People were afraid of Donald Trump, and they were afraid of Pierre Polyv. And I knocked on the door, and people said, hey, we like the work you're doing, we like Jagmeet, but we're just scared this time, and we feel like we need to go to vote for Mark Carney to stop Pierre Polyv.
Parliament is expected to resume sometime in May. Meanwhile, the NDP's National Council will begin the process of planning for a national leadership convention it did not want to hold.
All right, so NDP loses official party status, but they're still going to try probably to do some form of a coalition with the Liberals and the Bloc. So aside from federal stuff, what does this mean provincially for Alberta with this separation? Well, that's what we're going to now get into. So let's take a little look-see-poo at this.
Prime Minister Mark Carney promised to work for all Canadians after winning a Liberal minority government last night. With only 3 seats in Alberta, not blue, the Premier says she's going to speak with Albertans on how to proceed and protect the province from what she calls future hostile acts from Ottawa. It comes as the province aims to simplify the process for Albertans to hold a referendum on constitutional issues. CTV's Shaylan Skalski reports.
Just shut up and just be satisfied with whatever the central government decides to do, regardless of whether it's constitutional or not.
The Premier says that's how Albertans are feeling, but that it won't continue, as she pledges to get respect from the new Liberal Prime Minister.
Whether or not he, as a leader, is going to be able to change course remains to be seen. He's given some undertakings, but he said different things in different forms to different people in different parts of the country.
Smith says she will spend the coming days discussing Alberta's future, a future she hopes remains within a united Canada, adding Albertans can put any issue on the table for a possible referendum.
If citizens want to put a question on a ballot and get enough of their fellow citizens to sign that petition, then those questions will be put forward.
New legislation will simplify the process for Alberta to hold referendums on constitutional issues while lowering the threshold for citizen initiative petitions.
It does put this on the front burner that, look, the Alberta government is going to take this seriously and they're going to push back. We'll see how Albertans respond to this. There's no denying there is a constituency in this province that is so frustrated.
The proposed change comes the day after Albertans elected only 2 Liberal MPs in the federal election, fostering further sentiments of Western separation.
Alberta needs a binding independence referendum. It needs to set the boundaries clear with the rest of Canada. That Confederation is broken.
If you're going to flirt with separatism, call a referendum. Just do it, and let's see what Albertans have to say. And by the way, Premier, when you lose that referendum, please leave public life forever.
The NDP leader says the country and province must come together in the face of an existential threat, something the new Prime Minister promises to do.
I intend to govern for all Canadians.
Smith says she's made her demands of the Prime Minister when it comes to energy and plastic straws clear.
The ball will be in his court to see how he responds to that.
A special caucus meeting will be held Friday to discuss Alberta's next move.
And it gets more interesting from there. Danielle Smith is actually proposing or has changed how the voting process looks like for the referendum. Here we go.
Critics are calling proposed changes by the Alberta government to the Elections Act a way to further the UCP separatist agenda. But Premier Danielle Smith says several changes proposed to the Election Act are meant to make the democratic process more open and secure. It includes making it easier for Albertans to force a vote on specific issues. These could be a plebiscite or a referenda. 10% of eligible voters who voted in the last general election would need to sign a petition. Right now, constitutional initiatives need 20%. Smith was asked if this was to enable citizens to put a question forward about Alberta separation. She said that's up to Albertans to decide and said she isn't proposing it.
I believe in Alberta's sovereignty within a united Canada. However, there is a citizen-initiated referenda process that if citizens want to put a question on a ballot and get enough of their fellow citizens to sign that petition, then those questions will be put forward. Again, I don't want to prejudge what a question might be.
They are lowering the threshold of electors, getting rid of requirement that 2/3 of the electoral division be represented in those petitions. So what we have seen from this premier, she has threatened the national unity crisis before.
Other proposed changes include eliminating electronic tabulators and also eliminating the vouching process at polling stations to strengthen the identification process, and as well as creating more options for special ballots and making those more accessible. Danielle Smith also stressed the importance of getting all of those votes counted within 12 hours to ensure a timely and reliable count.
Absolutely insane, like I've said. Now, the bald guy from CBC did sit down with Premier Danielle Smith to talk about this exact matter. So let's take a look at this interview.
Fourth straight Liberal win will inevitably reignite questions about how the West is represented in Ottawa. Premiers are advocating for a reset as this new federal government takes shape.
What I heard last night is a Prime Minister, and I'm hoping a Liberal Party that isn't giving up on Saskatchewan people and the role that Saskatchewan plays in the Confederation. But we'll find out.
What Prime Minister Carney has to do is unite the country. He has to reach out to our friends out west and tell them how he's going to build that pipeline, how he's going to have opportunities for people in the West.
I would just underline how critically important British Columbia is to the vision of the diversification of markets and the future of our economy in Canada, whether it's energy, critical minerals, access to markets. My hope and expectation is that they're going to work together to make this Parliament work for Canadians.
Meanwhile, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is congratulating Prime Minister Mark Carney on his win, but she's also warning him that the status quo can't continue while describing the last Liberal government as hostile. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith joins me now. Premier, it's good to see you. It's been a while. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, David. Nice to be here.
So you congratulated Mark Carney, but it came with that warning, vowing that you would push back against any future hostile acts from Ottawa. I mean, what does that say about the starting point of your relationship with him now that he's gotten an electoral mandate of his own?
Well, we had to make sure that it was pretty clear the things I put on the table when I met with him are the same today, now that he's won the election. And it has been a little unclear about what policies he's prepared to move on. I think what we can take from this result, with more than 300 people for voting for one of the two centrist parties, that there's a huge appetite for us to be an energy superpower, to build corridors, to get our products to market. And you heard it just among the premiers. Didn't matter what political stripe it was. I think there's been a foundational change in the aspiration that each province has. And so I hope he captures that and is able to move forward with some of the changes he needs to make in order to turn that into a reality.
He's increased the appeal of the Liberal brand in Alberta and in Saskatchewan. 28% of the vote in Alberta, 26, I believe, in Saskatchewan, and seats in Saskatchewan for the first time in the decade, one seat at any rate. I mean, do you think that tells you something about Albertans embracing this more centrist approach of Mark Carney, for example?
Well, 65% of Albertans and 65% of Saskatchewan residents voted for the Conservatives. So they wanted the Conservative vision. I think the Conservatives have more credibility when they talk about energy development. And I think we need to be perfectly frank. It was a major pivot on the part of the Liberals to launch their campaign by ending the carbon tax, which has been one of the policies that has not only exacerbated the differences between our regions, but has also been a huge problem from an affordability point of view. So I think that I hope what the Prime Minister takes away from this election is that the fringe parties got pummeled. The NDP barely exist. The Greens lost a seat and should not have an outstated influence on his government, and the Bloc Québécois lost ground as well. What people want is an aspirational government that is going to get things done, that is going to open up new markets so that we're not overly reliant on the United States. And so to think that the old Liberal NDP alliance that crushes the aspirations of Alberta and Saskatchewan is going to work on a go forward, I hope he is not of that view. I think that there's a different pathway, and I hope he takes it.
But he has certainly signaled, Premier, that he says he's a pragmatist. He wants to find ways to move forward. He wants to still pursue a climate agenda, but he says he's not completely beholden to hard and artificial caps, for example, with the emissions cap, which I know is still in the consultation process, and I know you fundamentally disagree with it. My understanding of the Prime Minister's view is that he believes in it as a policy instrument, but not necessarily with the rigidity of the previous Liberal leadership team. A lot of talk about energy corridors. There seems to be alignment at the First Minister's table. Are you not in any way more optimistic that your natural resources can find easier paths to market and you can get better cooperation with the federal government than you've had in the last 9 years?
Well, I always live in hope. But you saw that the Bloc Québécois' first move is to say they'd partner with Mark Carney as long as he didn't build pipelines. And so that's what I'm signaling is that may result in some kind of stability to put a part of his agenda through, but it's not good for the country. I think what's good for the country is to listen to what the premiers have all said, to listen to what the people of Canada have said. And there's an unprecedented opportunity for us right now to build those new pipelines so that we have market access to the east, to build north so that we can potentially not only protect our Arctic, but also find a new route over to Europe. And yeah, we should be talking about building to the east so that our friends in Ontario and Quebec are not overly reliant on American supply of oil and gas for their needs. So I do hope that because there were a lot of things said during a campaign. I do hope that those are the messages that have gotten through, because I think if that is the case, we will all prosper. We will all benefit from that. Sadly, though, we have seen with his predecessors, many of the cabinet ministers who were at the table then are going to be at the table now. They had overly aggressive targets that were unachievable. If you try to set an emissions reduction target with a 2030 timeframe, that's only 5 years from now. The only way to achieve it is to do less, is to shut in your production. I've always advocated for a much longer time horizon, and we'll just see how pragmatic the Prime Minister is if we can find some alignment.
Right. Well, it certainly sounds like what Donald Trump has done has changed the perspective of a lot of people in the Liberal government, right? And Mark Carney has indicated that has influenced his thinking, and he wants to be pragmatic on it. So we'll see where it goes. And I know you mentioned Mr. Blanchet, and while he is an important voice in Quebec, he does not hold actual political power in Quebec. Mr. Legault has also expressed an openness, an increased openness to consider these things. So you're going to have a challenge with Quebec no matter who is in the Prime Minister's office, even if Mr. Polyv had won, because social license there is harder to achieve when it comes to an oil and gas pipeline. So, I mean, is it really Mr. Blanchet at 22 seats with Mark Carney only needing 3 votes in a parliament like this to get any kind of energy corridor legislation passed? Is the Bloc really an obstacle here if the Premier of Quebec is willing to talk to the Prime Minister of Canada and the Premier of Alberta and see if there's a compromise?
I just hope that he doesn't create an unholy alliance with any of the political parties that are opposed to building out economic corridors. And I think that the NDP has staked out certain ground, as have the Greens and as have the Bloc. And so I don't know how he's going to run Parliament. Sometimes there are formal coalitions. Sometimes there's just agreement on votes on an issue-by-issue basis. This would probably be the time right now to see all of the areas that we can find consensus on and move forward. And I make the argument, I was just out in Quebec recently. I want to do more business with Quebec. I was meeting with business leaders to find out how we might be able to buy more from Quebec and how Quebec might be able to buy more from us. Because I think that that's another conversation that has opened up. Let's find new markets. Let's find more ways to trade with each other. And let's hope that this spirit of cooperation extends into this new parliament.
Well, you say you want to do more business with Quebec, but as a final point, there's a lot of suspicion that you might want to be a little bit more like Quebec. And when people like Preston Manning were talking about a Liberal win, maybe exacerbating the idea of Alberta separatism. I just wonder what your thoughts are on that. I mean, is this something you would forcefully push back against as the First Minister of Alberta? The notion that because the national election didn't go the way a lot of people in your province wanted, that it becomes a cause for separation?
Well, I have always said that I support Alberta's sovereignty within a united Canada, and I think that is the viewpoint of many of the premiers, is that they want the Constitution to be respected. They want to be able to have local decision making. They want the environmental process to be at the provincial level. So I'm not alone in that. We have a process in our province where you have citizen-initiated referenda. If you have a certain number of signatures on a petition, issues can be put forward. If there is an appetite for that kind of conversation, that would be the avenue for it. But it's not something that our government would be putting forward. I believe that we've got to try to be on Team Canada, but my view has always been that Team Canada has to show that they're on Team Alberta too. And I think this is an opportunity for us to do that reset. I'm open-minded about it. I'm going to be working on that for the next number of months, but the proof will be in the action, not the talk.
Alberta Premier Daniel Smith, always appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
I'd love to know down in the comments what you guys think about moving forward, what this is going to look like. I know I'm still sad about the election results. Likely you are too. It feels like the wind has been completely taken out of our sails, but it does seem like good things are coming, especially for Western Canada, specifically Alberta. Let me know if you guys would support Premier Smith pushing forward this referendum and Alberta separating completely from Canada. If that happens, we know that Canada is kind of nothing without Alberta. So yeah, that would just fracture our entire country, and not a good look for the Liberals, right? Look at Mark Carney, couldn't even keep together a country. A lot of interesting things are in the horizon, but I'd love to know your guys' thoughts about any of the topics that were covered in this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in another video. Bye for now.